I'm continuing my discussions on a report that just came out recently by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. It's a publication of the National Intelligence Council, and it's called Global Trends 2040. It's the 7th edition. It's published every 4 years, started in 1998. And I'm going to focus mostly on the environment section, and also on a scenario that portrays global food shortages in about 2030, and then what countries do to deal with that in the 10 years after to 2040. So it's an assessment that looks out 20 years. But before I go into that, I just want to mention a book I've just finished reading. It's called The Obesity Code, Unlocking the Secrets of Weight Loss by Jason Fung. And it's very, very interesting and eye-opening. I have a little bit of visceral fat, the classic beer belly for people, males my age. And I thought, how do I lose it? And exercise doesn't seem to do it, and changing eating doesn't seem to do it. What I've learned from this book, I'm doing an experiment, and it's apparently, according to this, if it's correct, this book, it's all about insulin levels in your body. And we used to just have people snack all the time now. And when you snack all the time, whenever you have something to eat, whether it's healthy food or junk food, it raises the blood sugars, and it raises the insulin, and the insulin acts like a key which goes to each cell and opens up each cell so the sugars can go from the blood into the cells where it's stored. And that's how you gain weight. So when you're always snacking, okay, your insulin levels are nudged higher. Okay, insulin's a hormone. It's supposed to increase and decrease, right? But the levels stay persistently high because you're snacking all the time. When you sleep at night, they drop, but they don't drop as much as they would if you had a lifestyle like people used to have before the obesity epidemic, and that was eating 3 meals a day. So the idea is, if you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you don't worry too much about the food that you eat, the type and the amount, but you eat it, you have your desserts, but you eat in those periods, fixed periods, over, say, the course of 10 hours of the day, and you don't eat anything for the other 14 hours of the day. Drink lots of water. I put apple cider vinegar in the water because that's supposed to be very good. And that way, the insulin levels will rise up for breakfast and fall, rise up for lunch and fall, rise up for dinner and fall, and then drop quite low during the night and during those 14 hours when you're not eating. And then so it's not so much what you eat and the quantity, it's when you eat is crucial. And I haven't really seen that too many other places. This Jason Fung, he's got a number of YouTube videos, and he claims to, there's a lot of claims that he's been able to eliminate diabetes in lots of different people. Just so, one of the things is this intermittent fasting, if you like. It's, you're eating within a 10-hour period, your 3 meals, and then you don't eat for the rest of the period. And he talks also about insulin resistance, because insulin levels are high and sustainably high over long periods of time. Your body develops kind of a tolerance, in order to try to maintain a homeostasis or steady state. Your cells can have a resistance to the level of insulin, so you need ever higher levels in order to function. And to cut that insulin resistance, he recommends that you try 24-hour fasts or 36-hour fast, and that really cuts the insulin resistance. And then if you're eating your 3 meals a day without all the snacking in between, you could lose weight. So anyway, we'll try it and see if I can get rid of the visceral fat. Exercise is very healthy for many other reasons, but don't consider it as a huge thing for losing weight, according to this book. Anyway, so I'll let you know the results of this experiment. But getting back to the global trends 2040 report. Okay, there's a couple things. Let me just. Okay, so one of the things that is mentioned at the bottom, if you click on environment, that's the section I'm talking about, but there's these scenarios. So one of the scenarios is tragedy and mobilization. In 2040, a global coalition led by the European Union and China, working with non-governmental organizations and revitalized multilateral institutions, is implementing far-reaching changes designed to address climate change, resource depletion, and poverty, following a global food catastrophe caused by climate events and environmental degradation. So if you look at that scenario in more detail, basically how we got there. So in the early 2030s, the world was in the midst of a global catastrophe. Rising ocean temperatures and acidity devastated major fisheries already stressed by years of overfishing. Extreme weather events changed precipitation patterns and depressed harvests in key grain-producing areas around the world, driving up food prices, triggering widespread hoarding, and disrupting the distribution of food supplies, leading to global famine. A wave of unrest spread across the globe, protesting governments' inability to meet basic human needs and bringing down leaders and regimes. Okay, it goes on and expands on that and talks about green parties getting more recognition and more say, and new initiatives and new cooperation between countries, multilateral cooperation. Because the global food shortage, a global famine is an existential threat that could catalyze a bottom-up social movement that transforms countries and societies. Okay, so that's the idea of the scenario. So something to think about. Anyway, it's a very interesting report. So getting back to the environmental stuff, of course, climate change is here. We know that it's intensifying. We're living in a world already affected by climate change caused by growing human-induced concentrations of greenhouse gases, and it talks about the world warming, diminished glaciers and ice caps, higher sea levels, intense storms, etc., etc. The past 10 years were the hottest on record. Every decade since the 1960s has been hotter than the previous one. And it says it's probable within the next 20 years, global warming will surpass 1.5 while heading towards 2. Well, if you take the proper baseline of the year 1750, we already have months, and in fact, the entire year last year was 1.25 degrees Celsius above the 1880 to 1910 average, so that puts it 1.55 Celsius above the 1750 baseline. So we're already hitting those records. I say it's faster than in 20 years. And then it talks about the physical effects of a destabilized climate and the effects, melting Arctic and sea level rise, more intense heat waves, extreme weather. We're seeing all of these things. Some of the climate work leading to attribution studies. So when there's a heat wave or a catastrophic event, the attribution talks about how the risk is double or triple or 4 times higher because we're undergoing abrupt climate change than it would have happened before in a stable climate. It talks about the uncertainty of the feedback loops. And then adding to these problems are the land degradation, water misuse, and pollution. This is all eroding human security. It's exacerbating food and water insecurity, threatening human health. So here's a COVID connection. Okay, decreased water, air, and food quality, along with changes in disease vectors and waterborne pathogens. They all threaten human life. Extreme weather and disasters often kill people and disrupt health infrastructure, prevent access to care. Climate change is changing the geographic range and in some cases the frequency of disease outbreaks affecting humans, animals, and plants, including those that are vector-borne, West Nile malaria, dengue fever, waterborne cholera, airborne influenza, hantavirus, and of course the coronavirus is in there, and foodborne salmonella. So more outbreaks of disease and pandemics because of climate change. Loss of biodiversity is a huge one, and increased migration of people. Increased migration of people from cities that are devastated. Now, mitigation is gaining traction, okay? Recently, we had Biden say he wants to cut U.S. Emissions by 50% by 2030. There you go. Trudeau says 45% by 2030, but, Canada's never met a single climate target it set. I talked about the COVID-19 recovery efforts, the money going into fossil fuels. I mean, that's horrible. So it goes on. There's more information about the renewable energy transition. We missed a golden opportunity with the money to revitalize the economy. It should have all gone into renewables and not $350 billion into fossil fuels. But what can you do? And then it talks about some other key energy technologies and increased efforts to remove carbon dioxide. Okay, the amount of money going into carbon dioxide removal is diddly squat. Diddly squat. I mean, we're not serious on doing this now. There's just no, and the ideas that are put forward for carbon dioxide removal is, grow a lot of trees, cut them down, make wood pellets, and ship them off to Europe or something and sell them, and then get carbon credits, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. This is a real scam. I have no idea why this is still being pushed. And they talk about it as being a good thing in this report. I have to disagree strongly with them. I mean, we need to do CDR, but BECCS is not it just doesn't make sense to me. It takes trees a long time to grow and capture the carbon. So, and it does talk interestingly about a lot of other things, but calls for geoengineering. It says as warming gets closer to exceeding the Paris goals, it's likely that states and non-state actors will more aggressively research, test, and possibly deploy geoengineering measures. I think this is absolutely vital. And they talk about solar radiation management, and they talk about carbon dioxide removal, and within solar radiation management they talk about stratospheric aerosol injection, and they say it's it'll become risky, and they say that current research is mostly in computer models, but there's just no money from governments going into this. I mean, it's very, very little money, so this stuff is it's a survival mechanism for our planet, I think. So, it talks about, so there's lots of other aspects, so it's really a fascinating report, and I highly recommend that you just, have a look at it. And there's lots of different, as I said initially, okay, so this is the environment that I've been focusing on. The demographics, a key thing. I need to read it again. I read it quickly and my head was spinning after a while, and I'll reread it and maybe talk about some other sections. But basically the demographics is, some countries are experiencing, they're losing population because, and they have to increase immigration. But the age pyramid, more and more people the median age of people is going up in many countries, and what this will do to the economies and the different technologies coming out are, interesting, and how it all ties in with society, states, and international stuff. And they give some scenarios, and, it's, I should generate a similar report myself. With what I think. I think they've done a fairly good job. It's food for thought, and they said they're presenting it humbly. And, maybe I'll generate trends myself to see that happen, and much other education on the challenges we face, please consider donating to my PayPal at paulbeckwith.net. And thanks again for listening. Bye for now.